Hey guys, so this is going to be the part 2 of the Sewing 101 video that I did a while ago. Sorry it's taken me so long to do another one, but we just moved states and it's been a crazy couple of months. But we're all settled now and hopefully I can get more videos out quicker. It's going to talk about things like buttonholes and different feet and stitches, so stay tuned if you want to learn about that. So I know we kind of went over needles in the other video, but I wanted just to talk a little bit more about them. So for your needles here, these universal ones are good. I use these and I'm pretty sure you can use these with most machines. So your 7010 needle is going to be your thinner needle, and you will want to use those for your thinner materials like a silk or chiffon or something like that. Your 80-12 here are usually what you would use for your normal sewing, for like your cottons and stuff like that. And then your 90-14 is your thicker needle, and that you will use for like your denims or your velvets and stuff like that. And then this is just your jersey, and it goes for the same, your thicker jersey to your thicker jersey. Okay, so let's talk about changing your needle. So down over here, there's a screw, and you can use a screwdriver, but it's not too tight. I usually just use my fingers. You twist it, and then it will loosen that needle, and then you can take it out. So as you can see here, the needle has a flat side here. The rest is kind of rounded. So you always want to make sure that your flat side is facing back. I'll show you what I mean. So what I mean by back is this back, a flat side is going to be facing away from you and back towards here, and then you're going to insert your needle, hold it there up, and then tighten your needle in, and then once you're done with that, you can thread your needle. Okay, now I want to go over some terms that you'll need to know for your sewing. The first term you're going to want to know is your back stitch. You always want to back stitch before and after you sew something, and it just helps lock those threads into place so that they don't unravel when you're wearing your clothing. So you'll put your fabric in place, you'll bring down your lever, and then you'll back stitch and a little bit, and then you'll start just going forward and stitching your line. You're done with that and you're getting close to the edge, you'll back stitch again, and that will keep those threads in place. So the next thing you want to know is your hem. So most patterns will tell you how they want you to hem it. If not, then this is a pretty common way of doing it. So what you'll do is you'll fold in your bottom of your garment up, and then you'll fold it in again, and then that will give it that clean look that you want. You don't see any raw edges. And this is where your measuring gauge will come in handy. So somewhere between 1/4 and 1/2 inch is where you want to be folding. So say you're folding in 1/4 inch, you can move this little guy here up to that 1/4 or that 1/2. And then you would just measure it up to here and be like, okay, well, that's my 1/2. Now I want to fold it in 1/2 again. Just make sure that you're where you want to be, and then you'll sew. When you're sewing, you want to sew close to this edge right here, and this will help your hem stay in place and not flip up when you're wearing the garment. And there you can see that you have your hem done. This is what it will look like. It'll look nice and clean. You won't see any of the raw edges, and it won't flip up when you're wearing it. Something else that you want to know within your sewing vocabulary is raw edges. So sometimes they'll say something like line up your raw edges, and as you can see here, down here, I don't have any raw edges. They're all clean and hidden. This is what they would be talking about, your raw edges here, where you can see that some of the thread is coming out. And these right here are your raw edges. And when you're done with your garment, there should be really no raw edges showing. You're either gonna finish them off or they're gonna be tucked in. So let's talk a little bit about your stitches. I know you all know what a straight stitch is, but we can go over it. So also with these measuring plates here that we've talked about earlier, you can line up your fabric here. So if you say you want a inch seam allowance, you would line it up to your inch line, and then you'd put your foot down, you would back stitch, and then just stitch straight. So the trick in doing this is you're not keeping an eye on your needle, you are keeping an eye on this right here. So you make sure that your fabric is lined up to here and going towards there, and that's how you get your straight line. You don't look at your needle. So this is your straight stitch, which we're all very familiar with. Now let's try our zigzag. So I placed my zigzag number here in my dial, and now we shall just stitch. So you can also back stitch with the zigzag. And you can make your stitches, your zigzags longer, or you can make them shorter. Same with your straight stitch. You can make your stitches longer or shorter. So as you can see here, I have my back stitch, I have my regular stitch, my longer stitch, and my shorter stitches. So let's talk about finishing your edges. You can always just do a zigzag stitch to finish up your edges, or you can find a stitch in your machine that will do something similar also. So let's try, let's say 12. So you'll come here, you'll do the same thing and just line up your So you can do something like this for your edges, or you could try something like this. You just want something that will hold those ends up and that will help it not to fray. So sewing on a curve, I wanted to show you guys how you would do this easily. So you would start by just sewing like regular. Once you start to get to that curve, you can kind of just take your fabric and move it along, but you can also lift up your foot, turn your fabric, and keep going. And this will help with those sharper edges. And then you can see there's a nice little curve. Your sewing machine will come with a lot of different presser foots, but I'm just going to show you the ones that I use the most. So this is your button foot, this is your zipper foot, and this is your buttonhole foot. These two I actually bought separately. This is a walking foot. Some of your machines might come with this one, but I had to get mine separately. And this helps when you're using like knit fabric. It will help the fabric go in smoother and it won't get stuck. And this also helps when you're working with thicker fabrics like minky and stuff like that for making blankets. This right here is my ruffle foot. This is what I use to make ruffles and gatherings. And this I also had to buy extra. On the back of your presser foot, there's this little button here. And if you press it, it will bring down your foot and let go of it. And then it's easy enough to just take it out and put in a new one. So as you can see here, there's a little bar that all of your foots will have. And this is where you're gonna insert. So you will just line up that bar to the groove that's in there, and then bring your lever down, and there you go. I'm going to bring it down. So to use these other foots that I have, you need to undo the whole thing. So most of your machines will come with a screwdriver, and there is a little screw here that you would just twist, and then that whole part would come off, just like this. And then to insert the ruffle foot, you would just put it in and screw it on. Want to make sure it's tight on there. And then you have your ruffle foot. To insert this walker foot, it's a little bit more tricky. So you'll bring this around, and this right here you're going to place on this little screw right here, and then this little hand thing is going to go up here, and then you're going to screw it in. You want to make sure that you hold it in place, that way you know that you're screwing it on in the right spot. And then once you're done with that, you are ready to go. All right, now let's go over how to use your button foot and your buttonhole foot. One important part about doing your buttons is that you want to make sure that you come around to the back of your machine, and there's a little switch here. So once you come back around here, you'll switch this over just like this, and this will stop the feet from bringing the fabric through. That way your button will stay in place. Just remember to switch it back once you're done doing those buttons. So now that you have your stitch set to zigzag, the trick is to go use your hand crank here. So you're going to use this to bring down your needle, turn it toward you, and bring that needle down, and make sure that it's going inside of the buttonhole. Then it will switch to the other side and make sure that it's going down into that buttonhole too. Mine is set pretty good at where it needs to be, but if it wasn't, then all you would do is you would come to your stitch length here and you would move it. So if your buttonholes are wider apart, you would go up. If it's a smaller button, they're probably going to be closer together, so you would go down. So I got a smaller button so I can show you what I mean. Okay, so I have my buttonholes set in between the blue little piece there. Okay, so I'm going to use my hand wheel and bring it towards me, and I'm going to bring down my needle. And see how my needle won't go in because it's not in the right spot? So what you're going to want to do is go up to your length here, and you're going to go down. Let's try that. Okay, now we're going to go down, and now it goes into my hole. Now we'll check for the other side, and it goes in. So now you're good to stitch. So now you can just use your foot pedal and go slowly. So now that that's set, you can just sew with your pedal. You can even go a little faster and you won't hit the button. And there you have your button sewn onto your fabric. A lot easier than doing the hand stitching. So now for your buttonhole maker. You're going to do the same thing. You're going to take off the foot that you have and put your buttonhole foot on that bar. Bring down your foot, and then you have it on there. So I used to have a lot of trouble with doing buttonholes on knit since I work with a lot of knit for my girls' clothes. A trick that I saw actually here on YouTube was using this washable stabilizer. I bought this at Joann's. You can buy it online on Amazon, but it will help keep that fabric in place, and it will help make it more sturdy so that your thread doesn't get stuck. So you will put that under whatever buttonhole fabric or whatever fabric you're using. So you're going to go over and you're going to set your stitch to whatever buttonhole you want to make. So I'm going to use 35. So I'll go up here and I'll set my stitches to 35. So you're going to want to mark where you want your buttonhole to start. So we'll just say that I want it to start here. So when you're making a buttonhole, it's going to work backwards. So you want your make sure that you're marking where it's going to begin, and then where it's going to end is going to be somewhere over here. So you'll take your button and you'll put it in the back of your button foot or buttonhole foot, and then you'll make sure that it's nice and snug in there. So you'll bring this down and it's nice and snug, and then you'll put this on here on that bar, bring your lever down, and now it's attached. Also, there's this little lever here. When you're making your buttonholes, you always want to make sure that that's down, and that will guide your buttonhole foot and tell it where it needs to stop and start. Okay, now that we have that all prepped and set, we're going to start sewing. So I always put my fingers on the side of the fabric and kind of give it just the slightest little pull to help guide it along, especially with that knit fabric, so that it doesn't get stuck, especially on the part where it's doing the zigzag down. So I kind of just give it the smallest little tug. And there you have your buttonhole. Now to open up your buttonhole, you're going to take your seam ripper and rip through the middle of it. One trick that I've learned is to take a pin and to put it at the end of your buttonhole there, so that when you're ripping, you don't rip right through it and ruin whatever you've made. So you'll put it in the hole there and you'll rip, and see how no matter how much I try to like rip through, I can't go through because this is there. So there you have your buttonhole ready to go. Now let's talk about making ruffles. So if you don't have a ruffle foot like I do, this is how you would do it. So you'll set your stitch length to the highest it'll go, which is about 5. And then you'll set your tension also to the highest it'll go, which is -9. So you take your fabric and you want to make sure that you have a good amount of thread back here. You're not going to back stitch, you're just going to start stitching. And then make sure you have a lot of thread here left. And you'll do that twice. And now you can see it's already kind of starting to ruffle up. And then what you're going to want to do is you're going to take your bobbin thread, so the bottom thread here, okay, and then you'll pull it and kind of start moving the ruffles apart, and then you pull, and see how it makes more of a ruffle. So you want to make sure that the ruffles aren't kind of escaping on this side. You could put a pin in it, and just kind of secure those threads so that it's not escaping back here. But then you would just ruffle until you have the size that you need to attach that ruffle. Okay, so now we can use our ruffle foot. So you're gonna do the same thing. You're gonna set your stitch and your tension to the highest it'll go. And then also you're gonna wanna have your threads to be a little longer, and you don't back stitch, and you just start stitching. And see how it just starts to ruffle on its own. And then once you have that, you can just kind of you can kind of just space it out to where you want your ruffles to be. Thanks so much for watching my video. The next video I think I'm going to do is I'm going to go over patterns and how to work with them, how to read them, how to make sure you're following them correctly. And then after that, I think I'm going to start doing some actual tutorial and things. So let me know what kind of things you guys want to see. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you on the next one.